This is Raul Ramirez, where we're here in the Kung Fu Culture, our live stream and podcast. So, thank everyone for joining us. Hopefully, this podcast can like become a little bit more regular. I know we don't really do it as frequently, but um, we'll try to work on it even more because you know I think that Sanda is kind of getting a little bit more popular. We're also going to actually, it's good to talk about this because uh, I teach at UCLA. I teach Sanda at UCLA this upcoming quarter. So in the fall, we're also going to start teaching Chinese wrestling. So that's traditional Chinese wrestling. So it's the one where they have the vest on there. I have a background in training in that in Beijing Sports University. Also, I trained outside in Beijing at an outside traditional wrestling school, and I've been in competing in the sand arenas in Yunnan province in China, where they traditionally have a lot of wrestling for the local native like indigenous groups there. They really love wrestling. So in the villages, they have these big sand arenas for wrestling. So we're going to be having traditional Chinese wrestling classes at UCLA coming up in I think the end of September when school starts again. End of September, beginning of October. We will be focusing on like the traditional jacket wrestling, and basically that is takedowns. So others there are a wide variety of wrestling styles in China. So some of them will include like following through, like getting pins and stuff. So like in Yunnan province, but we'll focus on the traditional jacket wrestling. So that means you can get all kinds of takedowns. You can do it with the jacket or not. Um, so so anybody can do it. So everyone's welcome. So look into that, especially if you're a UCLA student. I believe people who are not UCLA students can find ways to get memberships to the gym and whatnot. I'm sure all that stuff's like available on the UCLA Recreation website. So, uh, you know, please ask them. I know we have different students who have like all kinds of ways to get memberships. So um, I think you have to like one way is like if you're married or living with a UCLA student or professor or something like that. So there's ways, I believe. Okay, so I want to talk about the main subject of today's podcast is cross training, right? So, as many of you might know, I also cross train or I also teach catch wrestling. So, it's a traditional Chinese, sorry, traditional British style wrestling that evolved into the Olympic freestyle. And in the United States, it's called folk style wrestling. So, this style, I'll talk about it later. But so I just know that I don't only do like Chinese martial arts, even though I have a wide, extensive background in them. You know, I know several like styles of kung fu, like several styles of internal martial arts, the joint locks, and all these different things. But in order to make yourself a little bit more well-rounded. So this is the subject: cross training for Sanda fighters. So if you're doing Sanda, there's ways to help you to become a better athlete and competitor overall. So one of the reasons why you'd want to potentially cross train, I think cross training for kickboxing, especially Sanda kickboxing, can be vital. So it can make you a better fighter. It can help you to improve areas where you're weak, right? So say like if you're really good at striking, punching and kicking, but not so good at getting the takedowns, then you might want to focus on that, right? And so then there's different styles of grappling that might benefit you better than maybe even some mainstream styles, right? So let's go ahead and I've compiled a list. It's all also on our blog. So if you go to our website, we have the blog there. So the most recent articles talking about this. So I make bullet points there. But so the first one that I think would benefit a Sanda athlete is either boxing or kickboxing. So not Muay Thai. I'm talking specifically about modern professional kickboxing. You might see a lot of it in one championship based out of Singapore. They do have a lot of Muay Thai matches, but they also have more and more kickboxing matches. So a long time ago, one of my coaches in China for Sanda was one of the main formulators or the founding fathers of Sanda. His name was Guanjian Min. He within maybe I think it was just before COVID. He put out kind of an opinion piece in the Chinese media where he was saying that he was feeling that Sanda is getting a little too takedown heavy, where people aren't really doing the kickboxing aspect of it. And so he says you have to remember at its core, Sanda is still mostly a kickboxing style, especially since once you get a takedown, you don't continue on the ground, right? The ref will stop you. You both will stand up. So it is of utmost importance to be good at kickboxing, right? So that's why I'm not saying to do Muay Thai so much, because the style itself won't like I see basically in my opinion I see Sanda closer to modern professional kickboxing. So you can look at the likes of say like what's it Chinggis Alizov or also in North America we have Gabriel Varga who also beat uh, Chinese Sanda fighters, but also some of the very best Muay Thai fighters from Thailand you in kickboxing matches. So uh, I think you want to focus your like your Sanda or build up the kickboxing aspect with either of those two, boxing or kickboxing or both if you have the time, right? Those both will help sharpen up your skills. They'll also help you. So like if you're in the clinch and you can't get a takedown, or say if you're not as good as at getting the takedowns, those styles will help you potentially get a knockout instead, or if someone's grabbing onto you, how to punish them for trying to clinch up with you, or punish them for trying to catch your kick or whatnot. Those two styles, boxing and kickboxing, in my opinion, are probably going to be the best for improving your striking overall. All right, and so then moving on to the next, there's the two next styles. Of course, you have to mention the style that I mentioned earlier, the traditional Chinese wrestling. So I would basically the takedowns in Sanda came from traditional Chinese wrestling. So it would be better if you, or it would be ideal if like, why don't you look like a little bit more closely at the root of the wrestling that Sanda drew its takedowns from. So in Sanda, they have a lot of what they call kuai shui, or like the fast throws. So quick takedowns that you can get quickly, or you can follow through quickly once you clinch up. So these are derived from traditional Chinese wrestling, or traditional Chinese jacket wrestling. So if you want to improve and learn these takedowns in a deeper way, then it just is logical to find out, or like to seek out an instructor of traditional Chinese wrestling. If you're in the United States, I think we have like three traditional Chinese wrestling organizations. I think we have two in California, or two on the West Coast. I think there's one up in either like Massachusetts or New York. So you can find it. You can also find it online and all that too. I think we'll probably even try to do some online course also, but that'd be in the future. So um, you would definitely want to like learn more in depth all the ins and outs of the wrestling style that Sanda drew its wrestling, its takedowns from. If you want to say like maybe later on we'll go to MMA, like fight in MMA, which I think we all know that Sanda is like one of the better base styles for MMA fighting. This has also been admitted by like One Championship, which I mentioned earlier. They have such a mix of like rules matches. So they've even had boxing matches, kickboxing, Muay Thai, MMA, grappling. A few years ago, they posted on their blog what they found to be like the best styles for MMA, the best base the best base styles for MMA. And of course, right in the top four was Sanda, Wushu Sanda. They a lot of them call it Wushu. I think it's probably maybe easier for it. But anyway, so we know that this style is really good for MMA competition, and so we see a lot of fighters coming out of China, particularly like the women, but also fighters coming out of the Philippines, Indonesia, and whatnot with a Sanda background. No, actually, in UFC, I think there are two women from Brazil with who are like the one who I think was like a Sanda, the Brazilian Sanda champion who just won her fight. I don't know if it's like her day. I think it was like one of her. I think she's only been fighting in UFC for a short amount of time. So we're getting more and more successful MMA competitors doing MMA. But I think what's happening is that you might have people doing like the mainstream art, which would be of course, like jujitsu. So a lot of them might be trying to mix the sanda with jujitsu, which is great for them to know, like how a jujitsu practitioner might be attacking. It's also good for a fighter to know like how to do these like joint locks and whatnot. But ultimately, what we've seen over the years is that people with a very strong wrestling background dominating overall in MMA. So since Sanda does have more of that wrestling base as well as part of it, like baked in, wrestling styles should be what the Sanda practitioner like it should be their what they're seeking out, right? But in amateur wrestling, they don't have submission holds. So while it's great and it's like one of the most ideal styles to train in, catch wrestling. So you can check out our YouTube channel. It's called Catch Wrestling Alliance, where we focus on catch wrestling. But that is the style where these very successful styles of amateur wrestling came from. But what makes a huge difference is catch wrestling is really cognizant of submission holds, right? So they use a lot of those submission holds. They also use a lot of toe holds, all these different like say like leg lock stuff. So you're going to be more aware of like submission holds and how to like fight them from this top down approach that Sanda has, right? So that's why I would say that Sanda and catch wrestling are a better mix than Sanda and Jiu-Jitsu. So that's just my opinion. I know a lot of people really love Jiu-Jitsu and they get upset if you don't recommend it as the top thing, but it blends better with Sanda because they both have this top-down approach. You start with the kickboxing, and if you catch their kick or you clinch up and you can take them down, you stay on top. You can potentially just stay on like pin them, like so you stay on top and then you just ground and pound, or you can transition to a submission hold. That is like really the way you want to approach it. And I think like say like I'll give an example too, like one of the recent matches in One Championship, one of the Filipino fighters, this man I think is Danny Kingad, he was going to fight the Indonesian freestyle wrestling champ. And in order to prepare for that, so since he already has a Sanda base, right, they brought in freestyle wrestlers, I think from Iran, to have him, to train to prepare him for the fight. And so Danny, in turn, like when the fight came, he was able to out wrestle the wrestler, right? So he's also able to outstrike him and also out wrestle him. And so if you get that kind of result just with the amateur wrestling, then I think you get an even better result with catch wrestling since it also has the submission holds baked in, right? So that's why I would give the edge to catch wrestling over amateur wrestling, and then of course over jujitsu, right? So Um, Other things you might want to consider, right? So think about if you're already really good at striking, maybe you want to focus on the wrestling. If you're already really good at the wrestling, then take more time to do the striking styles, right? Also, find a good coach. This kind of goes into the mental aspect, the mental game. If you're not comfortable with your coach or with your training partners, you might want to see if there's anyone else or any other gym nearby that can like help you get ahead, because really the mental game is you know huge in competition. So you want to find a good coach that not only can help you develop your skills, but can ensure that you're safe, you're learning correctly. You're not going to get injured before the tournament or competition. All these things are part of what a coach can help you with. So, mental game, learning better, learning safely, right? So, they're looking out for you, like all these things. You definitely want on your side in order to help you to perform better, right? There are also other things you truly want to include, right? So in order, like one of the best ways to minimize injury would be strength and conditioning. So that includes like all your weightlifting, your endurance training, your cardio, I would include, of course, like stretching. So you find a really good stretching routine that you can do regularly, right? That because range of motion uh, really helps to prevent injuries. So you definitely don't want to cut your career short because you're in pain. So really take care of your body, strengthen the muscles. So those protect your joints. One of the functions of muscles are to absorb shock. So since this style includes a lot of takedowns, slams, and stuff, so you want to absorb most of the shock in your muscles, not to your brain, or not to the joint so much. Um, so these aspects, so the strength the strength training, the conditioning, flexibility, in addition to your sport specific training, these are really a lot of the keys that will help you not only to do well in competition, but to help you compete longer, right? So take care of your body, also improve as a practitioner and improve as an athlete overall, because you're just going to be so fit from doing all these different things, right? So just make sure you're not overtraining. So it's really a fine balance, but I'm sure you can figure out what works for you. And the main thing to be looking for is if you're getting irritated, or these little injuries start coming up, then you got to try to reshuffle a lot of the different things, right? So in your cross training routine, so you don't necessarily have to go all out for boxing, or all out for modern kickboxing, or all out for wrestling or whatever. You can just incorporate more times to do that, but not necessarily like abandon Sanda and then do only like one of these other sports and then get injured and stuff like that. So just try to find that balance, find ways to incorporate a little bit more time to like strengthen some of the weaknesses that you have. All right. So I think this will probably be all for this one. We're trying to incorporate more things and try to do this more regularly. So thanks to anyone watching or listening. So we're going to post this up on our basically, I think, wherever podcasts are available. Now, our main goal is to not only talk about Sanda, but to talk about all kinds of ways to like approach like Chinese martial arts. So all different subjects like the wrestling, self-defense, joint lock stuff, philosophy, all these kinds of things we'll be trying to cover. So we're trying to do it more and more frequently, especially now we have a lot of like some of the MMA fighters. So we have a lot to talk about. So hopefully you join us. Our main goal is to, we say strengthen the mind and make fierce the body. I don't know if you guys know that old quote, right? So you got to be, uh, you know, improving yourself and improving the body, because there's a lot of battles you got to go through in your life and in your training. So That's our goal, to provide you interesting things to talk about and to learn about and to even put into practice in your martial art journey. All right. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.